On the 28th of October 2023, the Kingdom of Spain exploded. After a contentious series of negotiations after an inconclusive election, the center-left coalition declared a deal with the major secessionist parties of Catalonia, giving them a mandate to form a government. Right-wing unionists all over the country stormed onto the streets, and over the next several weeks the country was in an uproar. A prominent right-wing politician was shot in the face, dozens have been arrested, and the Supreme Court has warned about the implications of the deal. This conflict, hundreds of years in the making, is our topic today on Springtime of Nations. The story begins with the medieval Principality of Catalonia, a sovereign state in confederation with the Kingdom of Aragon. Catalonia was ruled by the same king but under their own laws. Indeed, Catalonia had, in 1486, largely abolished serfdom after a bloody peasant revolt, one of the first regions in Europe to do so. Slowly, this changed over the 16th century as Spanish monarchs consolidated their power over the numerous kingdoms and principalities of their realms. In the context of the Franco-Spanish War in 1635, which put their homeland on the front lines between these two large centralizing states, the Catalonians had had enough, not only of the stripping away of their regional autonomy, but the overburdening presence of the Castilian army in Catalonia, the imperial power in Spain. In 1640, this boiled over in the Corpus of Blood riots that swept the capital Barcelona and its suburbs, with pissed-off peasants yelling, "Long live Catalonia and the Catalans," and "Let the wicked government of King Philip die," as they killed Castilian officers, including the Viceroy of Catalonia. As the conflict spread, Catalonians declared themselves an independent republic in 1641 and allied themselves with the French in the broader war, with the French absorbing them into their kingdom later that year. The French and Catalonian forces were eventually defeated, with Catalonia being reincorporated into the Kingdom of Spain in 1659 Treaty of the Pyrenees. The last straw for Catalonian independence was after the Spanish War of Succession in 1714, when King Philip V officially changed Spain from a constitutional monarchy to absolute rule and imposed Spanish as the official language of Catalonia. Catalan is not actually a dialect of Spanish at all, being much more closely related to the Occitan language spoken in southern France. After this, Catalonian nationalism was repressed and dormant for hundreds of years, with the principality being officially abolished in 1833 in favor of 4 provinces, part of a Spanish centralizing reform. The 20th century, however, saw a rekindling of pro-autonomy movements in Catalonia, with the right-wing Regionalist League of Catalonia being founded in 1901. They managed to effect the creation of a federal polity known as the Commonwealth of Catalonia in 1914, with some limited regional powers. Frustration with the slow and compromising stance of the Liga led to the founding of the center-left Catalan Action Party in 1922. And after the abolition of the Commonwealth by the military dictator Primo de Rivera to the even more radical ERC in 1931, an important Catalonian nationalist party even today. By 1931, Spain had entered what is now known as the Second Spanish Republic, with the abolition of the kingdom after de Rivera was deposed. Initially, Catalonian nationalists supported the new Republican government, but broke from it in 1934 after right-wing nationalists took power in Spain and the Catalonians declared its independence for a single day before being crushed by the larger state. The so-called events of October 6 radicalized many Catalonian workers into joining growing Marxist and anarcho-syndicalist groups like the CNT and UGT labor unions. By 1936, Spain had been split between left-wing Republican forces and right-wing nationalist forces supported by factions of the army who engaged in the Spanish Civil War. The radical leftists in Catalonia joined together to form a semi-anarchist polity called Revolutionary Catalonia, wherein the anarcho-syndicalists played a decisive role in governance. Libertarians who may have heard of the intriguing nature of this social revolution should also know the darker side, best told by Brian Kaplan in his essay, The Anarcho-Status of Spain. To be brief, the CNT and their allies engaged in violent expropriation of land that involved the killing of clergy members, small businessmen, and farmers. They also became involved in a deadly conflict with the Stalinist faction of the Republican side, which led to the May Days of 1937, where anarchists and Marxist-Leninists killed each other on the streets of Barcelona. Infighting like this was a major cause of the defeat of the Republicans and the victory of the Nationalists led by Francisco Franco in 1939. When Franco consolidated his control over Catalonia, he not only abolished the Generalitat of Catalonia, the autonomous region's official name, but greatly suppressed the teaching of Catalan, Catalonian history, and even changing the names and coats of arms of sporting clubs like FC Barcelona. When the dictatorship fell with Franco's death in 1975, Catalonians were eager to take back what they had lost under his regime, with banned organizations and parties like the ERC reforming to run in the newly re-established autonomous region of Catalonia, legalizing Catalan in schools and other nationalist measures. In 2006, a broad coalition of Catalonian nationalist parties, ranging from Christian Democrats to classical liberals, social democrats and communists, pushed for greater autonomy in a referendum that passed with a large majority. The Spanish Constitutional Court, however, revised a large part of the Statute of Autonomy, which outraged the Catalonian nationalists, who engaged in mass protests that year with the slogan, Som una nació, nosaltres decidimos. We are a nation, we decide. With the other large pro-nationalist demonstrations taking place in 2012 and 2013 with an even more radical agenda, full independence. The Nationalist Coalition, still quite popular in the next few elections, prepared to hold a referendum on the question of national self-determination, which showed 80% of Catalonians who voted supported full independence, although only about 40% of the electorate bothered to vote. Pushing ahead, the Nationalist Coalition wanted a binding referendum on independence in 2017, while the Spanish Constitutional Court had ruled this to be unconstitutional against the eternal union of Spain. When the Catalonians ignored this ruling and got to work preparing for a vote, the Spanish state struck, sending military police to shut it down. This still did not deter the Catalonian government, which passed a majority resolution to become an independent state. The men and women who led these parties were hunted down and jailed. Some are still in exile abroad, and the rest remain in Spanish prison, with some minor government officials levied heavy fines. With the deal between the left and the Catalonian parties in 2023, amnesty for these men and women has been guaranteed. The Spanish right, who see a unified Spain as something like a god, are outraged and see this as a betrayal of king and country. The tensions in the country will most likely only increase when the leader of the Junts, seen as the ringleader of secessionists, Carles Puigdemont, returns to his homeland after 6 years in exile. Given the seemingly ironclad ruling by the Constitutional Court, judges across Spain have warned that this amnesty could undermine the rule of law, and some have investigated the Catalonians for terrorism to head off any attempt at amnesty. One problematic issue of Catalonian nationalism of interest to the libertarian is that many of them are for rejoining the European Union after breaking off from Spain, which seems very counterproductive. However, the silence of the EU towards the violent repression in 2017 of their movement has cooled their attitudes towards that supernatural empire, and Puigdemont has called for a referendum on EU membership in 2020 and referred to it as a club of decadent and obsolescent countries controlled by a small few and closely linked to increasingly debatable economic interests. Indeed, the EU Justice Commissioner has echoed the concerns of the Spanish judges regarding the amnesty deal. What will come of the actual amnesty is impossible to tell now, nor is it clear that the Catalonians will be able to continue their push for independence in the near future. But their cause is just, and libertarians of all people should support this rainbow coalition of Catalonians of all stripes who wish only to be left alone and to see to their own affairs. To quote Catalans themselves, Som una nació, nosaltres decidimos. We are a nation, we decide. Long live Catalonia, and may 1,000 flowers bloom.